Edge of Eternities releases in 1 week from the time I'm posting this video, and as become tradition on this channel, we do like to take a look at the pre-sale prices, kind of see where everything is shaping up, and get a sense for what exactly we're going to be in for when the set restrictions lift on TCG players. So, one thing I want to note very quickly before we start, because people will always comment this on the videos as though I'm unaware, pre-sale prices do not necessarily reflect what the prices will be when the set releases. In 99% of cases, pre-sale prices will drop massively. Now, there are a few exceptions to this where sometimes something, when it comes out, people start to realize it's good. When streamers can start to play on Arena, cards get more hands-on experience and things go up. But generally speaking, in most cases, the reason I like to look at pre-release prices is to get a sense for sort of where we're going to be looking when the embargoes are lifted, because TCG Player limits who can pre-sell stuff, and so there's a massive spike in price because there's no competition from sellers. So I'll give you one example as we start looking at this, talking about Ancient Tomb from the set. Ancient Tomb's Galaxy foil is right now pre-selling around $425. Now, that is obviously fairly high, although it's Ancient Tomb, so I don't know. I mean, it's not egregiously high comparatively, but I don't think this card is going to settle at $425 when people can start listing. However, it's also not going to be widely available to the point where it's like going to be a $95 card, right? So the reason I like to look at this is to kind of get a sense for what's trending high, what's trending low, and what might be good pickups when the set actually releases. That's kind of what we look for, and that's sort of what the goal of this is. So, let's get into the actual video, and we're going to talk about a few things here because it is very interesting to watch trends. That's really all I care about when I'm looking at pre-sale prices is trends. What is trending? How's it going? Where's it going? Etc. So we sort it to best selling, and I always think it's interesting to look at the fracture foil versions of stuff because these are really scarce in the sets that they appear in. I don't know the exact numbers, but I'm fairly certain they appear in less than, I know it's less than 5% of collector boosters. It may be a much lower number than that, but it's certainly at least less than 5%. So I don't really like to touch those in terms of value. They all will come down. It has happened tried and true. Every single one will come down. So I have no commentary at the moment on those, simply because I just think that they are going to be a complete wild card. But there are some cards on the best selling that I like quite a lot. I made a video talking about Ice-Till Explorer. Now, this card is insanely strong in my opinion. Landfall is very popular in Standard right now. I don't know if this card is going to be an instant slot into those decks because it does cost 4, but I certainly think it's something that will be considered, and it's definitely a card that's going to be good in Commander because anytime we get access to cards that allow us to play additional lands and lands from graveyard, those cards are popular, and this does both. So this card's base version is pre-selling around $6 to $7, which leads me to believe that when the stuff lifts, it should hopefully be around $4 to $5, which is awesome. I know there was some concern that this was going to be a high value rare. I'm glad to see that's not the case. I mean, obviously, once it comes out and people play it, there's certainly a possibility we could see it spike. Bristly Bill is a great example of a card from a set that was pre-selling at like 15 to 20 bucks and is now like 65. It's certainly, there is room for anomalies to happen, but I think Ice-Till Explorer is definitely one of the top performers of the set in pre-sales, and interestingly enough, it has been doing fairly well. Another card I see a lot of people talking about is Thrumming Hivepool. It's a sliver card, so it's going to have people's attention no matter what, and if you look at the chart, it has been trending down from when it was pre-selling at 28 at one point, and down to about 10. I do expect this to, again, fall under the $10 mark once you can start listing, but it's a really good card, and it's definitely strong in slivers, but it also might have some application elsewhere because it can just make slivers, so being able to create a 1/1 with double strike and haste, and make 2 of them every turn rather, not something to sneeze at. A solid card, and it's not a legendary artifact, so if you play it in decks that can copy it, you can really start to kind of amass some stuff going on there, so I expect a lot of people to be going after that card as well. Going to shift a little bit here as we go because I want to touch on a few things, and I think the shock lands are, this is fantastic. And I'm not going to go into all 5 of the shock lands in the video because people obviously can get a sense for it here, but let's take a look at Stomping Ground here. Stomping Ground is currently $6.36. This makes me so happy to see because I think this means there's a real chance that when the set lists fully, that these could fall under $5, and to be able to pick up any shock lands under $5 is just a great value in my opinion. Now, I have to say, when Ravnica Remastered came out last year, the Shocklands were fairly cheap out of that. They were somewhere around 10 for a little while, and then they slowly started to rise back up over time. I can almost guarantee you that the same thing will happen here with these Shocklands, but it will probably be a while before that happens. These Shocklands outside of like True Duels and Fetches are arguably the best lands in Magic, period. So if you can pick these up under $5, or for some of them like Breeding Pool under $10, that's a great long-term value if you're someone like me who like wants to be able to like have multiple copies of things for my different decks and whatnot. You know, if I can pick up a couple of Stomping Grounds for $5 a piece versus, you know, paying, I don't know, on average, what are they at, you know, $15 or so out of, you know, promo pack variants and whatnot. They range a little bit, right? But Ravnica Remastered, which again came out a year-ish ago, $12 for this. So I can get basically 2.5 shocks for the price of this one, just gonna have a different artwork and whatnot. That is an awesome value, and I think it's impossible to understate how good this is going to be for the game and for people who like to play budget. Breeding Pool at $6.98 when every other version of it is well over $12, $15. This makes me super happy. I hope these continue to get listed cheaper. I do think with cards of this playability, there is very much a possibility that when it hits a certain low, it will start to rise back up. That just happens because people are going to look at it and, I'm going to buy a bunch of these. But there are already, you know, a lot listed in pre-sale, right? There's already 141 listings, and that's just pre-sale. So this is going to be widely available. And that's awesome, because these, again, are some of the best lands, period. And they are also really safe pickups because of the fact that they do end up going back up over time. And we can revisit this conversation, you know, in a year and see where these Shocklands are at. And I can almost guarantee you that they're going to be pretty good. A couple other cards I really like out of this set in terms of value, and I think are going to be worth keeping an eye on. Terra Symbiosis, really good card. Whenever you put a +1/+1 counter on a creature, you draw a card equal to the number of counters. It is limited to once per turn, but that's a balancing factor that's necessary. A super cool card, and I definitely think, again, a card that could over time see its value go up because of how playable it is in so many different scenarios. And it's got different versions, it's got borderless and whatnot, but again, it's under $5 already before the full things can be listed, and that's a good sign for it, kind of keeping an eye out on cards like that that will definitely age fairly well, you know, as we go along. You know, just quickly touching on what I said earlier about the fracture foils just before the thought leaves my brain here with these sort of unfiltered videos. Ice Till Explorer, very popular card. The fracture foil version of this card is just super, this is crazy. I wouldn't touch this with a 20-foot pole. $500 is nuts. But it has sold around $100. I could see it settling around that $75 to $100 range when it comes out, and then maybe more if it ends up being better. But again, with the fractures, it's really hard to say, right? Because if you look at the historical fracture foils from Foundations through what we have now, only a few of them have gone up significantly over time, and they're like Lanoir Elves, Doubling Season, etc. So it's definitely one of those things that with the fracture foils, you're going to want to keep an eye on and figure out whether or not they are something you need. But there's a lot of potential for good value here, and we're seeing good value before we even know what the settled price is going to be. Some people will tell you to completely, you know, not buy anything early. My mentality has always been the best time to buy. There are two times. It's release day, when everyone's competing to make sales and you can snipe good deals and pick stuff up cheap, or like 2 weeks after release. That's the two best times to buy. Buying stuff, you know, later as the week goes on, you get spikes because of hype, you get all that kind of stuff. You got to play it a little bit better, but generally speaking, on release day, you can sometimes find good deals. Frenzied Baloth is just a crazy card. It's a super good card. It is going to absolutely see play in multiple formats. It is at $5 right now and will likely fall lower than that once the restrictions are lifted. But it's just super good. Something to keep an eye on too, because cards like this do typically end up rising. So it's one of those things where if it falls to like $2, I don't know, maybe you grab a couple and then you're set for a while. A couple people asked me my thoughts on the planets. I'm honestly shocked that this card is like $22 right now. I know it can become a Tolarian Academy, and that's a strong effect, and we look at that and we're like, oh my god, but like the station mechanic is very questionable, and while it's possible they might print more stuff to support that mechanic going forward and things that'll make it better, it feels like people are speculating on this heavy because of what its effect can be and not how it might actually play out in practice. So I would just caution on any of these, to be honest with you. If it's a card you're definitely going to play and it's something you want, but looking at this and the Gaia's Cradle one, I mean, they're both solid-ish, but the mechanic itself, I mean, they enter tapped, you have to station as a sorcery, they're very slow, and so unless people find ways to break them or future support makes them better, I just can't see them holding this value, especially not when there are, like, Galaxy foil versions of them and borderless foil versions of them, but I could very well be wrong. Obviously, this could certainly be something that I am missing, and I welcome anyone's thoughts and feedback on it, because, I mean, some of the other planet lands are just really bad. The red one, the black one, in my opinion, both just terrible cards that don't have much real application anywhere. Which is just kind of interesting to think about and look at. There are a lot of other things in here that I think we need to see them kind of shift value-wise before we can make any judgment calls on them. The borderless versions of a lot of the Shocklands, again, still pretty cheap, $11 for Watery Grave. I mean, if you like that stuff, foil's a bit higher, obviously. But there's value to be had there, and that's sort of the whole point in this video, is to say, keep an eye out, but looking at how things are going already, I definitely think there's a chance for some good stuff. Starfield Vocalist is an underrated card. It is $2.42. It is just really good. It's being able to double trigger stuff is great, and being able to cast it for warp works really well with that. So just, something to keep in mind in terms of potential value spikes. I really like Anti-Causal Vestige, the Eldrazi card. I don't necessarily think it's crazy good, but it's an Eldrazi, it's decent, and it's only $2.50. I mean, there's reason to believe this card has a place in certain decks, especially with Warp being able to use its effect multiple times. So another card to kind of keep an eye on. That's sort of my whole point here, is that the pre-sales are telling me there's a lot of potential value that might come out once sellers start to compete. It's a lot harder to predict for the bonus sheet because of how scarce they are, and I'm not going to touch the Galaxy foils right now. I mean, I don't even know what these are going to look like. Ancient Tomb, I hope will drop. I don't see it dropping too much, though. If it hits under 100, that's good, and I'd like to be wrong on this, to be honest with you, so I'm happily I will eat it if I'm wrong. But, I mean, we've got some good stuff here. Gemstone Caverns borderless at $29.99 is really good. Mana Confluence at $24, also really good. So hopefully these end up continuing to drop, because there are definitely some lands here that will be worth picking up if you've been waiting on them. I think you'll have opportunities to get them pretty cheap. So it's just going to be interesting to watch and see, and as we usually do with these, once the set actually releases, we'll go through and do a video and do a price comparison and see whether or not there's still some good deals or things end up being better value-wise as we go. But I'll pass it to you guys. Let me know what you think so far with what we're looking at here. Do you think there's some good value here? Do you think there's some stuff I missed? Obviously, I didn't cover everything, but I just wanted to point out what I think are some good deals and what look like they are going to be, really good potential going forward. I'll catch you guys in the next video.